Would you believe that the buzzing little pollinators responsible for your honey nut Cheerios scared away an entire Viking army from an Anglo-Saxon city in the Middle Ages? You heard that right. The city of Chester sits on the River Dee near the Welsh border in Cheshire, England. Originally an old Roman town named Diva Victrix, the city continued to grow after the Roman settlement withdrew. They left behind a strong square of stone ramparts and straight streets that later generations built on. By the early 900s, those Roman bones were still visible, shaping life inside the walls. Gates on each side, a market at the crossroads, workshops along the lanes, and space for churches and garrisons. Control of Chester meant a defended crossing, a base for trade, and a shield for the Mercian heartland. The driving force in the city was Æthelflæd, the lady of the Mercians and daughter of Alfred the Great. While her husband Æthelred declined in health, she effectively ran Mercia and forged a chain of fortified towns, burhs, linked by roads and rivers. Chester was a jewel in that network. Rebuilt ramparts, new timber works on top of Roman stone, watch rotations at the gates. The city became a hard target for any raiding force trying to break into the Midlands. Two threads were converging. After 902, Viking leaders expelled from Dublin looked for a new base around the Irish Sea. One of them, Ingimundr, was allowed to settle near Chester, likely on the Wirral Peninsula, but the wealth and position of the city tempted him and his allies. At the same time, Chester had already seen serious interest from Scandinavian forces in 893, when a Viking army tried to hold the site and was frustrated by local scorched earth tactics. Everyone in the region knew the stakes. If Chester held, Mercia's frontier held. The most vivid version of what happened next comes from an Irish narrative that, despite its flair for drama, aligns with what we know about early medieval warfare. Ingimundr rallied Norse and Danish bands and marched on Chester. Inside the walls, the defenders, Mercian troops and townspeople, coordinated with Æthelflæd's officers. The plan began with a controlled risk. Open a gate, feign a retreat, let a portion of the attackers surge into the choke point, then slam the gate and destroy them in the confined streets. The ambush worked and bloodied the attackers badly, but it did not end the crisis. The survivors regrouped outside the walls and shifted to methodical siegecraft. They built hurdle shelters, wooden frames covered in wicker and hides, to shield sappers as they crept to the base of the wall and began to dig. From the parapet, defenders rolled boulders and heaved heavy timbers to crush the frames. When the besiegers buttressed their shelters with thicker posts, the defenders hauled up great cauldrons of ale and water and poured the boiling liquid down. Blistered skin and scalded hands slowed the work, but the hurdles did their job. The sappers kept coming. Then, the tactic that made Chester famous. The defenders brought up the town's beehives, a common and important type of livestock. At that time, their honey was used as a sweetener and their wax used in candles to light halls and churches. The hives were hurled down onto the attackers crowded at the base of the wall. Hurdle roofs could shrug off stones and oil, but they could not stop swarms of furious bees finding seams and gaps, stinging into faces, throats, and hands where armor was weakest. Tools dropped. Men tried to swat and cover themselves, bumping into one another in the crush. The protective order of the sapping line dissolved into panic. With the digging stalled and morale broken, the attackers abandoned the siege. Chester held its walls, quick-thinking defenders, human and otherwise, deciding the day and going down in history.